Hello, Nigel here. As an owl, I love to be awake all night, but allergy sufferers like you probably don't feel the same. So take Zysol at night to relieve allergies while you sleep. Then wake up fully refreshed for a more productive day. Zysol works fast and offers 24-hour continuous relief from sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat, so you can enjoy doing the things you love all day long. Be Wisol. Take Zysol at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we are going to talk about how things change from women's 30s to their 40s. And this is a very popular topic because this is a time where a lot of people reach out for couples therapy. You know, they're done having their kids in their 30s, and then, you know, the relationship never feels like it gets back on track, and it doesn't ever get back on track because that track is gone. That track is in the past. But certainly the marriage could be happy, but it's not going to look like it did before children. And also women change a lot from their 30s to their 40s. And most humans do change, but we will talk about why some men think that they do not change at all. Equally untrue. And, women feel a big biological change as well that a lot of men do not feel the same way. And I will talk about that as soon as I tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was Jealousy Isn't All Bad, which if you are married to somebody avoidant, you know you wish they would be more jealous. And I will talk about the ins and outs of that whole dynamic and what part of jealousy is bad and what isn't, and healthy versus unhealthy, and the evolutionary and biological underpinnings of mate guarding, etc., and 200 other interesting episodes if you subscribe. Okay, so when a woman is in her 30s, her hormones are a lot different, her body is a lot different, everything feels kind of like she's an old 20s person. You know, and if you're in your 20s, you're young. And so being an older version of a young person is still a young person. So, a lot of people feel that there's a tremendous change in their 40s. Sometimes they keep going like the road runner, when he runs off the cliff and he keeps going in the air and then he drops. So some people go past their 40th birthday. They're like, oh, not for me. Nothing's going to change. And then bam, it's like 41, 42. Or, according to research, an accelerator age is 44. That's my current age. And then everything feels like it goes to shit. Now, men obviously also feel aging and complain about it and feel mortality. And overall, they feel not as attractive and not as, they can't run and lift and stuff the way that they used to. However, and I'm not even going to put in the guys and testosterone in this. Obviously, if you're adding in something into the mix like testosterone, then you're going to feel totally different. But even for the guys who don't, they do feel the change in age, but they usually do not feel a change in sex drive the same way that women do. And this leads to, obviously, marital issues because the guy felt that when they were out of the baby stage, they were going to go back to the sex life that they used to have, at least a little bit. And obviously, I've told you about the honeymoon stage and all of those, new relationship energy and infatuation sorts of things. But beyond that, there is a tremendous physiological change because the 40s starts perimenopause, which, as I've told you, is the 10 years before menopause. Menopause on average is at 52. So the woman's drive is down. And if she doesn't know anything about herself or her body, yes, healthier women with a positive attitude about their marriage and who grew up in a happy home where they talked to their mother, they were close, they talked about aging and change and this and that. Nobody really talks about sex drive necessarily, but at least aging is real and it happens and it's not the worst thing in the world. Then those women will say, oh yeah, like as I age, I have less of a sex drive, obviously. More how people used to think. People used to live in extended families. You would see many people of different ages, like in your extended family. People lived together a lot more. Age was just more obvious. If you are related to, let's say you got like 4, sisters and two cousins and an aunt or five, and they're all living around the same area, you basically see yourself at different ages. Like, y'all look kind of the same, and you see yourself at different ages. Oh, here's what I'm going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Here's how I'm going to act and feel. People don't do that as much anymore. You know, people are not as close to their families. And there's this whole idea as, you know, pharmaceuticals and, you know, all of these things make us feel that we cannot age, that that's just like an option. It's like a choice to age and a choice not to age. And if you take the right supplements and the right hormones and you take the right drugs and you exercise in these certain ways, then you're going to be on a completely different trajectory than anybody ever before you. And that's just not true. I mean, you could change things a little bit on the margins, but most human beings just continue looking like their mother, their grandmother, their aunt, all of these things. And of course, for the men too. You know, it's funny because when I go and do things with my daughter now, a teenager, like obviously there's other teenagers and their parents. And when you see a teenager and their parent, they usually look the same in a way different than little kids, you know, or even a little bit older preteens look. When you're an actual teenager out in the world, walking around with a parent, let's say at a college tour, you know, and I'm on a college tour with my daughter, and then there's people, you know, other teenagers on college tours with a parent. And especially if it's a same-sex parent, you are like, man, isn't that like, they're like the same. It's like a little dyad. And it's like, you see, oh, this is what this organism looks like at 16 versus at 46, you know? And it's cute. It's nice to see that. I had not had a teenager yet. She's my oldest, so I didn't really understand that. And it would just click over into that you could, once you're on the adult track, you know, and you're fully through puberty, then you just look like a younger version of your parent a lot of the time, especially the same-sex parent. Not everybody, but a lot of people. So either way, that's a more healthy perspective. It's kind of, we all just get older, and as we get older, all of our drives go down, and eventually we become old, and old people kind of, you know, don't have a lot of, you know, life force necessarily. They like to do different things, quieter things, things involving staying in the house and, you know, staying on their routines, et cetera, et cetera. And that used to be considered just totally normal. Grandma would be at home knitting and cooking, and the younger people would be working, and the people younger than that would be out, you know, doing fun stuff and partying, et cetera, as young people do. And that whole balance has really changed to the point where people would literally take offense from me saying that old people like to stay at home, which is like crazy. And it's why I like the book Die with Zero so much. I have a whole podcast about that book because he literally says, as you get older, you're going to like to do less and less stuff. So spend your money now when you're young. Taking a trip when you're 30 is going to hit a lot different than taking a trip when you're 60. And that's just like literal common sense that he, you know, is now proselytizing as though it's new information. And I get it, because I got to proselytize it like it's new information too, because it goes against this new idea that you can be young forever. And when you get to your 40s as a woman, to return to the topic at hand, you are very aware that you're not going to be young forever. But if you don't have that longer view and that kind of that context within your family and positive feelings about changing and age and how people grow across the lifespan and change, then you're going to think that your drive is down because of your husband being a dick. And then that goes along with a lot of stuff you're going to read on the internet. Oh, I guess he doesn't do enough emotional labor, mental load, blah, blah, you know. And yeah, your husband can be a dick, but it has nothing to do with the fact that your body doesn't feel the same in your 40s as it did in your 30s. And that's totally, totally normal, you know, and that doesn't mean most people stop having sex entirely, but it does mean that, especially for women with a long-term relationship in their 40s, the sex life does not feel really at all similar, unless you're with a new partner, new honeymoon stage, whatever, which of course goes away. it doesn't feel even like the same activity. It's like playing, my freeze tag analogies, if you're a long-term listener, and it's like playing freeze tag when you're a kid versus playing freeze tag with your kid. That's not the same activity. It's named the same thing, but it isn't the same activity. Like driving when you're 16 versus driving when you're 46. Those things should not both be called driving, And so for a lot of women, when they hit perimenopause, that thing that you're having, that sex, it's not what sex used to be. That's a different word. Those should be considered like different activities because they feel very, very different. And then when you get past menopause, then a lot of women feel like just they don't even remember almost. It's hard to remember. Some women say, and I've told you guys this before in other podcast episodes, that some women post-menopause say that they feel when they think back like it's almost like a daughter or a sister when they have their memories of being younger. And I haven't heard that from men as much until they're a lot older. When men are like, in their 60s or 70s, it's like then they're like, oh, I feel very, very far away from that young man that I used to be. But around the 40s, the man still feels more of an identification with himself in his 30s and 20s than the woman does. So the woman feels real biological shift. Her children are older, as I just said, like I have teenagers. A lot of people have teenagers. When you're a woman and you have a teenage child, it's like very salient that you are not young. Men, by the way, the healthier a man is, the more that he's close to his family, the more that he has good relationships with older men in his life that kind of give him a positive view of the trajectory of aging and that life goes through stages, et cetera, then the more he is attuned to and aware of the passage of time, and the more that he can say, yes, I am in a very different stage now than my son, and let's say my son is 15 and I'm 45, we are really different, and that's okay and that's good, and I want to give him a positive role model, and I'm not going to be out partying and carousing, for example. I'm at a different stage of life. He's coming up to the partying and I'm not doing the partying the same kind of way. I'm focusing on career, I'm focusing on community service, I'm focusing on being a good dad and a good husband and a good family member, whatever. But people who struggle, by the way, and continue, one that women say a lot about their mothers when they come in, if they say that their mother was very narcissistic, they'll say she's still dressed like I did. She tried to dress the same as me when I was a teenager. It was like really uncomfortable. And, she was obviously trying to act like she was younger than she was. Kids can pick up on that, by the way, and they look down on it. Obviously, as you remember from your own age, from being young probably, when you see the person that's trying to act like they're 20 years younger, it's not a good look. And that's because it feels selfish. It feels like you already were a young person. Now you're supposed to be my parent. Like now you're supposed to be going to a different stage. And I have a podcast called When Your Father Out Alphas You, and I talk about the aspects of this with that as well, where the guy's trying to grow into his being a young man, but like the dad doesn't want to get rid of being in his prime. You can see this with Succession. So with a lot of narcissistic parents, it's like they always want to be in their prime. They will never let the child take over kind of and be in the prime of their life because they cling to the prime, and I talk about this a lot in my podcast about aging. So ideally, in a healthy couple, people say, okay, well, then what does it look like in a healthy couple? In a healthy, happy couple, as the woman changes from her 30s to her 40s, some of her values change, her drive drops in different ways. And honestly, so does his. For the men that are honest enough to admit it and are not fluffing with porn or testosterone, they see their drive go down too, instead of like being able to do it 2-3 times a day, once a day, every other day could be good, like a couple times a week actually wouldn't be bad. It would be fine, but a lot of guys will not say that because their identity is so tied into being the guy who says that they could have sex constantly. And, it's honestly sad because a lot of people then keep on doing these crazy things and testosterone and Viagra and all this stuff and porn, of course, as I discussed, so that they could continue to feel young and young and young. And they're like destroying their marriage because the woman is like, why can't we mature together? We could still have sex, we could still be close, but why are you still constantly looking in the mirror and telling me you're in the best shape of your life and all of this crazy stuff? And why do you sound like a raging narcissist? Why can't you just kind of move into a different dimension? Because now we're parents of older kids and we're doing this and that, and it's not all about you, And so these are different dynamics that come up. But for healthy couples, they see themselves as getting older. They're proud of their children who are now coming into young adulthood. And they still want to be close and connected, but they do not think that the sex life is going to be like it was 10 years ago, And also, after menopause, most women do continue to have some kind of sexual contact within the context of a loving relationship. Now, if you're not in a loving relationship, then why would you do something you have zero desire to do? I have a whole podcast or a post too on the we do what we want marriage and why it leads to sexlessness when her drive drops. Because if your whole life as a couple, as individuals, has been we do what we want, well, when she doesn't want to have sex, what do you think is going to happen? She ain't going to do it because it's the whole context and the culture of your relationship. So the more self-centered people are, the more narcissistic they are, then the less they do anything they don't want to do. And guess what? Here's the secret. Most people who are self-absorbed marry other people who are self-absorbed. Then they may be in a totally different way, an overt narcissist with a covert narcissist or an enabler or whatever. But the reality is that most people, they get used to each other, they grow together. And so the people who struggle with aging, kind of are drawn to other people who struggle with other things. And if you want to get into a healthier relationship where two people can accept aging and also figure out how to be close and connected throughout the lifespan as a couple, then both of you have to work on that. Both of you have to open up your mindset. Both of you have to both accept aging and figure out how the relationship is going to look, often in the absence of any templates. Because these are the people, as I said repeatedly over the course of this episode, the people who struggle the most are the people that do not have templates in their own family that they love and respect for how aging looks in a positive and healthy way. And of course, couples therapy can help. But honestly, if you deeply struggle with the ideas in this episode and the fact that everybody ages and gets older and that drives drop over time for everybody, then individual therapy is kind of the way to go to figure out, why am I so upset by the obvious idea that time marches forward? And what did I learn in my upbringing? Why am I railing against getting older? What am I trying not to be? What am I scared of? Am I even happy with where my life is at? Or am I distracting myself with this constant, obsession with not recognizing that things change? Because things change. And the people that have the best sex lives in their 40s, 50s, and beyond are the people who respect each other and love each other as a couple. It's really hard to respect and love, a partner who's acting like aging isn't happening at all, and that you should be the same as you were 10 years ago. Women in particular have very low patience. But, it's not women in particular. It's the person. Listen, it's more women. But there are plenty of deeper thinking men who are considered the deeper partner in the relationship, and they are the ones who are thinking about all of the issues related to midlife and aging and mortality. And they say, why does my wife not think about these things? But still, since women are generally more verbal, more into therapy, then I hear more women that say, why is my husband acting like he's not aging, than I see with the inverse. But still, I have seen it before where guys say, well, what does she do? She goes to the gym. She wants to get plastic surgery and she's trying to act like, she could stay young forever. It's so much effort, so much money, so much time, and for what? And so they too can feel kind of a bit disgusted by that. If they situate it as somebody who kind of can't see reality. Nobody likes a partner who they feel can't see reality. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day.